All right, Don, sign in to the document, please, if you have not. Okay, and then we can move on to new faces, which I see none at this point in time. So the first standard item on the list, lifecycle release. I put that on here. My question is just whether or not there's something that we should know, I should know, if, I guess the weeks ahead are, I know we don't have I guess, working group meetings or a lot of the common rituals. Um, is the release still anticipated to happen even if it doesn't happen this week?
Yeah, I think it will happen today. Um, Reason for the delay has been partially just due to smaller group with less availability this week than usual. Um, but we haven't run into big problems in the life cycle. The one thing we have run into big problems with is validating with Tecton. It was definitely on our list of things to prioritize for this release in particular because we were making changes to auth, which encounters some like different cases in Tecton than it does in Pack. Um, and we've been seeing auth problems in Tecton, but we've also are seeing them with older life cycles. So it doesn't seem related to our changes, and it's unclear what's going on there. It doesn't seem any more broken. So if we can't figure out what's going on with Tecton, we'll probably just release it because we've found other ways to validate all those auth cases so we know that they're working. But it feels a little bit bad to see persistent auth problems in Tecton and still ship it. So we're going to time box trying to figure out what's going on there. But it could just be some other Tecton bug that's out of scope for this lifecycle release.
Is that the only thing that's holding it up, the Tecton related issue?
Yeah, just getting some of that validation done, or at least explaining what's happening to our own satisfaction.
Yeah, cool. I know Natalie reached out right before lunch. I'll probably get in touch with her and maybe yourself and see if there's anything I could also help with. Cool, cool. All right. Next item, lifecycle config. Who wants to talk
Yeah,
about
sorry.
this?
I was trying to find the unmute button. Yeah, I guess I don't even know if I can share a tab. I don't know how this works anymore. I haven't shared anything in Zoom in forever. Um, yeah, I think this will work. Yeah, this is just the start of an RFC. Just looking for early comments. The basic idea is that we want to introduce a config file for the lifecycle components to kind of read in by default. There was a thread in Slack that kind of started this discussion. The main driver for me right now is actually like order path, for instance. Order path can be passed into lifecycle as an argument, or it can be passed in as an invar, or it can be defaulted. But in sort of a Kubernetes situation where you may be uh, kind of doing some pre-processing of the source code you're about to build, it may be, in our case, we would like to create an order file based from like a project descriptor. And there's really no way to do that in the same pod because the pod definition in a Kubernetes world is sort of, it's set as soon as you create it. And so this would allow us to be able to kind of emit with our own binary as a pre-step to the lifecycle stuff, this configuration file, and then have lifecycle read this in and use that when it's sort of negotiating the configuration for itself.
The intent of this be that essentially almost every argument that you could pass into creator, right? Because I think that encompasses
Not even
most of the
argument,
individuals.
basically just every invar um, that you can configure today. Everything you configure from lifecycle with an invar, CNB underscore whatever, would be able to be configured through this TOML file. And so that you could have this mounted as a volume after you've created it to all the different stages of lifecycle and have it automatically read from this configuration file, either from, and including the arguments, like you said, if there are lifecycle arguments that can be passed, then maybe those would show up here as well. But I think right now I'm just sort of concentrating on the C and B prefixed invars.
I can definitely see the case for wanting to do things like no color and log level on disk, because right now your choices are environment, variable, or flag.
Mm-hmm.
But in Kubernetes, like a file,
it's sort of
file-based is a better way to pass things between containers. I am curious about some of these other, the ones that are actually files, like the order.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that, if you generated an order, you could actually just mount it into the location we're looking at now? I guess I'm sort of wondering about like a file that you use to configure the location of a file. Like, is there something we could do to make these cases easier without that extra step of indirection? Like if we put files that might fall into this case, like order toml or project metadata toml, all under a CMB lifecycle config directory, and then you could just mount in the whole directory and you'd have the files there.
Yeah, that would also be, exactly. Yeah, if that was a part of a normal sort of path that it would do after it didn't, if it looked in like CMB/config and then it had an order toml, and if it was there, it would use that. That would definitely work for these file-based ones.
Yeah, like we may still want to have another file in there for the ones like no color and log level that aren't file-based right now. But I wonder if that might be better than sort of look up a path to find the default for a path, because then you get into the natural question of like, well, should the config path be configurable?
And it is actually, yeah. I've got like a CMB, like CMB config path, which I didn't really talk about the recursiveness of it, but
stuff like caster though definitely falls out of, I think, the category of things that you're talking about, Emily, though, right?
Yeah, that's like one of the things you probably want to put in the new file.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense for the stuff that you just said.
Yeah, I don't know if it. I mean, I think it makes sense, and that's where I would prefer to be able to just write a file to like CMB/config, and then, like I said, mount that in all the steps, and then it would just automatically pick that up. I don't know that I like that suddenly you'd have to know the ones that are file based have this one method of being able to configure from a file, and the other ones, I guess if we go with a strong schema, it would be more clear. But I do kind of like the simplicity of it being like CMB underscore. Anything that you can do with that is in this file.
Yeah, that was, I guess, maybe a little hint to my initial question. It's like whether it's anything that I could essentially configure lifecycle is in this file, and if so, that makes it very simple, right? Versus, I think what's being proposed is like you could do some of them here, but then some other ones are just based off of this like magic location. So I think that would be the drawback of that solution, right? Is you have to think about where you want to put these sort of things, and what is the definition for when you put it in one place versus another one, and then making sure people understand that.
Like we could just inline all of it. But I think it's good to have options to split it across files as well, right?
Because you can achieve what we're talking about by setting order path and CMB/config/order, right? You could do that, but then now you have to remember to mount that file, right? And so I definitely get the simplicity of having the sort of known location for files themselves. I just don't know if it outweighs the simplicity of understanding like what you can configure in a single file. But I'm kind of okay either way.
I think if it's a single directory called config, like that might work. Okay, it's still one place.
Yeah, CMP config, and then you'd have, I guess, order toml. I'm just trying to think about what other files
Project
exist.
metadata,
Yeah, report
stack
toml.
toml.
What would
So
report
so are
toml be?
we?
It's an output, not an input. So it's kind of like
Yeah,
it
like
gets a little weird.
outputs.
Yeah.
I think start going in the layers, right?
Yeah. So that makes it a little confusing to kind of know where to draw that line because it's not even as simple as anything that's a path.
Unless like we put outputs in layers, like at least outputs from one phase that are inputs to another, because it's a convenient place that is a volume, right? That gets passed between things. I guess we could establish the convention that config is a volume, right? Because that's what you'd be wanting to do in this case anyways. Maybe it's just one. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's like a directory here, right? Where it should be mounted as a volume, and if we find things in there, they get first precedence. But because you're going to want to mount it as a volume, you're not going to have to repeat default config that you weren't trying to change. Like if we don't find it there, then we go look in the location that would be like baked into the builder in this case, right? For an order toml.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be this directory, then environment variables, then default values. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Flags, then the directory.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Then environment variables and default values.
Oh
It's
wait,
getting
so flags.
complicated, but there is a real case for all of these things, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess so it's clear for me, are we saying that there'd be like a CNB / lifecycle / config / and then in there you could have like a config.toml that has individual options, and alongside of it you would have stack toml, order toml, and then project metadata. And so those are inputs. Then what about the outputs? Would they also go in there, or would they go in layers?
I'm not totally convinced. I feel like you could do it either way. It kind of makes sense to me to put them in there, but
One thing that I think I would not want the build packs to be able to write to the directory where these config lives, and so I don't know if that changes anything, but like a report toml or I don't know, like they have access to the layers directory, right? So like putting it there is, I don't really want build packs to like read or alter this and do weird things.
I think the build packs, yes, have access there. But I feel like a lot of the access guards aren't really built in by the lifecycle. Sort of the build pack kind of has access to anything the user has access to. We don't do a lot to restrict that. It's sort of like platform and stack honor system there. But I guess it's about what locations we give the build packs to suggest that they should use them. But actually the top level in the layer stir isn't one of those places. We only tell build packs about their corner of the layer stir.
Right. I guess I'm thinking from like a Kubernetes perspective, like being able to mount this as a read-only volume would be important to me, I think. So once it's created, it would only be writable for the first container and then read-only from containers from there on out. And so I think the outputs, I don't know that I would want them to, at least by default, to kind of assume to be written to this directory if it exists. But I guess that's, I don't know. That's a very platform specific thing. So,
To this directory?
right,
the
to whatever
layers directory?
to the layers directory is fine, but I wouldn't want to like suddenly switch all our defaults to not be in the layers directory if this directory exists, if this config directory exists.
That makes sense to me.
Or I would want it to be its own directory. So if we had like cnb/inputs and cnb/outputs, then that would be okay, because then you could have an outputs directory that is writable.
It's weird one of the outputs is an inputs to the next one.
Yeah.
Unless you want people to like switch them between, but that starts to get awkward.
Yeah, well, I'm not expecting to solve this. I was just trying to get some feedback. I think if you want to throw some feedback onto the PR, that will be useful, and maybe I'll have some time to circle back before the next meeting to tweak this a little bit. But I think it might make sense to just do, I don't know, maybe just the first part of this config. Like, I'm not sure whether we should go ahead and do a single RFC for like folder-based config, as well as like like the path stuff. Like, I don't know whether we should break that up into two different RFCs or a single RFC. But
let me read through it and think about it some more.
Yeah.
I'm leery of too many levels of indirection and defaulting, but we kind of need them all.
Yeah. I started thinking, Lifecycle is going to go ahead and just import everything in platform env, but that's only for the context of the Buildpacks, not for itself. Because that would be the other option, right? It would have like a platform/env/lifecycle or something, which would be like the things it loads into, and that would prevent a config file. But it just means that you still have that sort of indirection and pathing, right? The same things sort of exist there.
It is interesting as far as just the path, whether it makes more sense to have a CNB/lifecycle versus a platform/lifecycle config.
That's true. Yeah.
The problem is we give the whole platform dirt to the Buildpacks. We didn't carve out like a separate corner of it that was Buildpack only. It's supposed to be like platform to Buildpack.
I think at that point it's just semantics, but it just feels better that from a platform perspective, manipulating the platform directory as my entry point is like the one thing to manage environment variables and also configuration.
We can change everything. We can have platform Buildpacks and platform lifecycle. I can put things in each place.
And that would be a platform API change. And would it be a Buildpack? Can the lifecycle just not?
No, it wouldn't, because we could just give the Buildpacks the subdir. They wouldn't need to know it had changed.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, I still think it makes sense to have a config file. Now, what's in the config file is still debatable, because I think the env stuff is interesting and still might be useful for something one day. But like configuring the lifecycle via envars in a directory does seem sort of convoluted for little game. There's no schema ability and stuff. It'd just be like you writing whatever envars you want and hoping for the best.
Cool. So check out the RFC. Anything else on that one? All right. We have stack packs was added to the agenda.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to tell Joe I did approve it. I left a bunch of comments as well, because every time I read through it, I like to think about one more thing. But whether we fix it or not, I'll take it. We can fix what we need to fix later.
Yeah, I mean, I think most things look pretty straightforward. There was, there were some things I thought were significant, but they weren't contentious. So I'm looking at the 2 comments about excludes. I haven't really processed it yet, though. We need an output for tarballs from excludes so they can be cached during export. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. And then the second part of it is, where do the files from excludes? Oh yeah, they end up in the tarball, right? Okay, I can fix that. The range of errors, do you care what range we use for extender errors?
No, I just look at what's already in the platform and pick the next range of 100 error codes. I think we get up to 700 right now with the launcher and the rebaser, so 800s.
All right, yeah. I mean, anything else I should know about? Otherwise, it looked good.
Yeah, I want to talk about sort of approaches to how we get this into the spec, because I do want to do it in thinner slices than what's in the RFC.
Should we talk about it now? Is there anything else on the agenda?
Go for it.
Yeah, let's do it. Are you gonna make me rewrite the spec before I do this? It's gonna really piss me off.
I mean, maybe. It depends on what things need to be there for this to happen, you know? Like,
It's a threshold Emily has to make herself not rewrite the spec, Joe.
yeah, I wanted to, add one flag for project metadata to the spec and ended up having to rewrite the whole platform spec because it didn't have flags in it. So, it's just the occupational hazard.
Occupational hazard.
Yeah, I have a hard time, like, it's fine, I'll try to do it. I have a hard time with it though, because I do think of these things like more holistically. So I feel like when I break them down, I just start mentally losing track of things. Like I'm gonna do this refactor to put, like, I know you want to put the mix-in stuff first, right?
It's a hard prerequisite, right? And
yeah, I agree with that.
It sort of already makes sense on its own terms. Like we should be validating those.
Yeah, I just feel like it's just gonna be double the work is I guess what I'm worried of. Because I'm gonna like do that and then put more stuff in and then re-review that and I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't work. And yeah, I just worry about it just being a lot more work. But if I can try.
It doesn't, to me, it feels like we've talked about how this has gone slow and been difficult before. I think part of that's sort of like the big bang of getting it all done at once, right? Because there's so many things to think about how they intersect or places we could have forgotten to think about something. I feel like in some ways it's...
Yeah, I feel that was necessary for this. I mean, maybe because we've done that, the thing I'm worried about won't happen because there'll always be like this big bang thing to reference back to.
Yeah, we got the big plan here, but if we can come up with pieces that make sense on their own terms, I think it would make it a lot easier to approve and even start working on some of it rather than pulling everything in all at once.
So do you already have a sense of how you think it would break down? Like mix-ins first and...
Yeah, I would say like provide mix-ins to lifecycle. Is the first thing, because Stacks Packs literally can't get off the ground without that, right? The whole description of what happens in detect is predicated on the fact that we have that information.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then, like, you had created a section for build pack types, right? But left out the sort of the order build pack, multi build pack type.
On purpose.
On purpose.
I assumed they would come after.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to like cut a release of the spec that had a build pack type section that left out one of our types. I feel like an easy thing to do there would be to start by introducing the concept of types, because we already have 2 types, and like make it clear what parts of the spec apply to which type of build pack, because then we'll have a framework we can plug the new type of build pack into.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. It's probably not too hard to add that. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, though.
And then
Like,
I
how
know
do
we
I
talked
do
about this when
that?
we were going over the RFCs, but I think it would be really limit the scope of the complexity of getting the spec and lifecycle done if we could start with just the mixing case. And we can layer in other stuff later.
I didn't follow because you didn't go where I thought you were going. What do you mean by just the mix-in case? You're talking about implementation now?
Well, and having I'm talking about cutting an API that has a subset of the functionality that's in the RFC, so we can implement it and ship it actually, because it's a full API. And sort of, I think a good subset of that would be if the first iteration of stack packs can only provide mix-ins, not arbitrary things.
So cut all the way through to, you know, yeah, doing everything except for non-mix in, basically.
So that would be like the CA cert build pack example, and
I think the way you wrote the example, the CI certs aren't doing mix-ins, right?
they're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of what things would not be possible with that.
I think the reason I like it as a subset is because there's certain cases that get confusing to me on the rebase side of things. Like when the thing that was provided has a bunch of metadata that came from a build pack writing the requirement. How do we reprovide that during rebase? But what's nice about the mixing case is the name has all of the information in it, so we don't have to worry about like, oh, is the path to this, is the content of the search something we actually want to put on a label? Like maybe that's not safe. Like there's a lot of complexity around the plan as an input to rebase that doesn't exist in the mixing case, because the mix-in's like,
Right,
you have a name mapped to a well-known definition. I feel like once we get that in place and we feel good about it, it'd be easier to talk about how to augment it with the other use cases. And it's the most important use case. So I feel like it's nice that users' priority and convenience line up on this one.
Now that CA certs, that can has been kicked down the road, at least from what I've understood on y'all's side. Solutions exist in other ways.
I actually had a thought about if we wanted to do CA certs as mix-ins. What bothered me about it before was the mix-in name that we were providing, like I think you had an original example where CA search for mixins was sort of like a path on the file system. But what I didn't like about that was that the name itself didn't capture the description of what the set of changes was. It was contextual based on the state of the file system at the time, right? But I was wondering, like, we could actually, I think we could define mixin definitions for CA search, where you take the OpenSSL canonical hash of the certificate, which basically uses the name and does some transformation on it. You get a hash back. Like we could come up with some mixin schema that's like cert colon this hash, and then it would actually always mean that the same host was trusted no matter what, regardless of how you got there. But I think that's a conversation we don't have to do stack packs. But if we started with mixins, then after we did that for packages, we could either talk about how we want to fold certs into mixins or talk about how we want to expand to non-mixins, sort of following the guidance in the RFC. But just make it easier to tackle and make me less worried about a bunch of edge cases.
I think that can make sense. Yeah, I do think that there's still a case for like a stack pack that is that executes, that does nothing with mixins, right? It just needs to do its work, and that might be reading some like certs that are in a volume that it knows will be there during build and rebase time. That's like configured through the platform, and some, that the user doesn't really have any say in directly in like the build plan or build pack plan. It's just provided by the platform, and those need to be installed and configured and things like that. So I do think we'll still want to push on the non-mixin version, but yeah, I think it makes sense to start with the mixin version. I think that's fine.
One of the reasons I think about this, and I don't want to open up contentious conversations, because I think we can do non-contentious parts of this first. But I wonder for some examples, like the Chrome driver, what we want is really a root build pack, a root app pack, not a stack pack. Like rather than being able to modify it anywhere except layers, you want it to modify layers and maybe the app. So it's something that only runs at build. It doesn't run at rebase. I don't think you want your rebase upgrading your Chrome driver. Like you could break your app.
Yeah. Another case for Chrome driver is, I mean, this is something I want to tackle sometime next year, is testing, which doesn't need rebase. So I think there might be a case for root app packs. Just don't rebase. It's fine, in the future.
I'm curious to see if we did this in the order of stack packs, which do make sense, which are part of the stack. And then maybe if we did a root app pack, do we still need a stack pack that does arbitrary things that aren't a stack defined concept? Like maybe we don't. Maybe we do.
Yeah, we might not. I think, no, we might not. And I think part of the reason that I pressed that, even though it felt like, do we really need it, is I was testing the abstraction, right? Like, because if you boil this down, you could start to get to a point where it's like, oh, I don't need detect. And then maybe this isn't really a build pack, and that worried me. So I think that's why I was pushing so hard to see if it was possible that we wanted stack packs that didn't use mixins. And I think we decided it's possible enough that the abstraction makes sense. So yeah, all I'm saying is I think you're right. That's the right place to start.
Are we able to do the CA certs with like a root app pack? Like, because you still need it to run on the run image, and you need it to. Yeah. I guess the difference I think that Stephen really had about stack packs versus like app root build pack or whatever, was about rebaseability, right? So ABI compatibility.
Maybe there's some things you want to do as root, but you don't want to rebase it, and like that it might be better if it's a build only type situation. But I think CS certs and packages are the kind of thing I want to upgrade on Rebase. But if we could fold both of those into the mixing framework, it could just work.
Okay, coming back to the build pack types, I worry that, like, I get what you're saying, but I worry that it's like a chicken and egg thing. Like, once I try to include both, I have to have this big PR that's both the multi build packs and the stack packs in one. I mean, if you're talking about like an API version release, that's fine. I can do them in separate PRs. I just worry that like what you're asking for is actually antithetical with breaking it down into smaller pieces.
I think if we're targeting the 07 version of both APIs for this, right? We still have an 06 that hasn't come out yet. Like if we got providing mixed into the lifecycle in an 06, and if we got Buildpacks types as a concept in an 06, like there's no stack pack in this concept, but we already have 2 types of Buildpacks. If we could just get that in first, then we'd have a better baseline to start doing stack packs on top of.
Yeah, so that makes sense. And well, getting it in for 06 sounds great, and I think we can do that. But still, I'm talking more like procedurally with how things go into 07. Like, I guess what I'm asking is, when you say both, when we do the build pack types in the spec and we capture all of them, are you saying that has to be one PR, or are you saying that has to be one API version?
I'm saying I don't want the spec to have a types section that's incomplete.
For an
but
API
it doesn't have
version.
to be one PR. I'm asking you to to make a PR that
makes more sense.
That does the order build pack first. Like introduce the concept of types and describe the 2 types we have. Something that's true now without stack packs.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You're saying correct the spec.
Yeah,
first.
I'm saying fix the spec so we have a place. Please refactor the spec before we do this feature so it's easier to add it.
Yeah, I mean, that should be pretty easy. I don't think that's much to talk about. Actually, we already captured the schema for Buildpack Toml for that, I'm pretty sure. So it's just a matter of calling it out that it is a distinct thing. Are we cool with multi-build pack? Or do we want like composite build pack? I feel like meta build pack was never really the right thing.
Yeah, and it's like taken off. I think the spec right now says order build pack, but I kind of hate that one too. I like multi build pack personally.
Isn't that what the really popular build packs call as well? It's on like Heroku where you can like group them together or something.
I just try to distance myself from $D$ware at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of means a slightly different thing in V2A speak, but I think it's fine.
I also want in the build pack interface section, I feel like right now it's not clear that it only applies to one type. I want sort of like different interface sections for different types. I know for stack packs it's going to look a heck of a lot like the regular one, but rather than having a bunch of inserted deep in text, a bunch of this only applies to, but also if it's a stack pack, this one thing, I'd rather just have separate sections where there's a lot of duplication. But if I'm an author, I can go read that section.
Yeah, it makes sense. I thought of a couple other things I wanted to bring up today. You think we're ready to move on? Okay. Some folks from Astana added themselves as adopters. And so I was looking through their build packs, and they document that you should use the from equals builder thing, which bothers me because that feels like a hack. And I think we even say it's deprecated. And I think it is a thing that a lot of people have asked for. We should start thinking about whether to spec that or like formalize it.
Where are you looking
or
right
something
now?
like that. Oh, I put a thing in the chat.
Yeah, he pasted in chat.
Yeah, but it's still deeper than that.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
found
Jesse.
what
Yeah,
you
it's
were
further
talking
down
about.
in the stack. Yeah.
That's what I was looking for.
So I just wanted to plant a seed there.
Didn't even know that existed, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I didn't until I started digging through the code to look for to do some of the Buildpack URI stuff. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean,
In my day-to-day life,
think
I found using the Buildpack URIs to actually be very difficult. With the pack seal, I don't know if anyone's run into that problem.
What do you mean? So like, I think that's, I mean, if you are struggling with that, it's because we haven't finished the registry is my guess. Like right now it's like, oh, you mean it's like verbose? Is that kind of what you're talking about? Or just that, oh, because you probably need like 80 build packs when you specify build packs, right?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I want to like switch out a build pack that's in the middle of a meta build pack, and that just totally stinks.
Yeah, that we've had similar complaints as well, or appending to a particular group in a meta build pack.
Yeah, and
There's
that's
no way to
basically what
express
from builder is, right? Append to the end of the from builder.
I want to change something in the middle
or
though.
beginning line. Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying like I don't think we should, like if we're going to formalize from builder, we might need to start thinking about how, just generally how do you inject into a group.
I also feel
yeah,
like,
I don't know.
So I feel like there have been a lot of bugs and edge cases, but we keep fixing them so it gets better. But I just ran into like a thing the other day where like poll policy doesn't work if it's a registry build pack, stuff like that.
And that's super
Yeah, that's
annoying,
why there's
actually. I think I reported that
wait,
somewhere.
doesn't work?
Yeah,
No.
it
It
just
doesn't work the
always
way you
polls.
expect. Yeah. And if you do no poll, like, yeah, it does not work the way that you want it to work.
Okay, something must have changed because it actually the first time I ran into that, it was a problem because we had pull policy never, and then it wouldn't pull our build pack. It was like I didn't want it to pull the builder, but I needed to pull the build pack. And so that's why I created pack pull build pack. So something must have changed if that's the case. And now it just always pulls it or something.
You know, we talked about extending the pull policy to have like a build pack pull policy or something as well, right? Because you like you said, Joe, you might want to always, like, you might be testing a builder. You never want to pull the builder, but you always want to pull build packs, especially explicitly expressed build packs from like pack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And then the other thing was the search API RFC has the votes and the stack pack RFC has the votes. So is it okay if I move those to FCP now so that we can wrap them up at the end, like after the holidays and not have to wait another week? Very cool with that. All right. Well, when we come back from the holidays, I should have some shiny new spec PRs.
Looking forward to it.
What's the other one you want to move to SCP that's not stack packs?
Search API. Did you vote for it yet? I think it
No.
was waiting on yours. Okay, well, once you do that, we will FCP it. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. I just want to make sure that when we come out of the holiday, we can finalize those and not have to do another week into like, then you're into mid-January.
If you want to talk about mix-ins to life cycle or some reorganization of the Buildpack spec, feel free to reach out to me. I know I keep saying it like it's easy, but I actually think the mix-ins to the life cycle has some big problems with the run image. So we have to get creative about how we solve it. That's one of the reasons I want to do it first, because I think it's actually a big problem.
You're thinking more about implementation, right?
Implementation that will affect the platform API for sure.
Okay.
Like right now, we don't know what run image we're using at detect time.
Yeah, that was called out.
And we don't run any phase that has access
see.
to registry credentials before detect. I think we might need to like do some big things like move analyze before detect or something like that in order to actually do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rename, analyze, prepare. So
Yeah.
that we have a place. Kind of circling back a little bit to the pack build, like from Builder. I wonder if we should invest some more resources into like what it would look like to inject or override in a build pack group through project descriptor, so that you don't have to like fight with these command line args. Because I don't think you're ever going to be able to express these things really easily and be like, yeah, I want to replace build pack at 2 with 3, or I want to append at position 4 in this group. Like that's never gonna.
Yeah, position whatever. Yeah, but I think what came to my mind was like piggybacking on another build pack. Like I think in most of these cases, it's like, oh yeah, I just want to run before the Java build pack, and not like I want to run in position 3. And like that might actually solve the problem where there's like the builder's order that has multiple groups, where it's like anytime the Java build pack runs, I want to run this Java agent build pack with it, you know.
Are you talking about?
But I agree with you in that
Toml?
it like no, I'm talking about in Project Toml, like what Jesse was saying, I agree with. I think however you want to express that, I don't think it works well on the CLI. I think it's one of those things, like actually what Emily was saying too, like the -- build pack flag is a pain in the butt, always will be, just because you're usually talking about a list of things, and it's an ordered list, and it's a long list sometimes. And the reality
When
is
I want to
like,
do
those
something
things just
first, it's easy because I have these meta build packs. So I say extra build pack I want to run, and then I reference the meta build pack. 2 flags long is fine. If I want to go last, it's easy. Luckily, the way our things are written, most of the time I can put something, for a long time I could put something first. And even if I wanted to do was a replace, that was fine because it would just grab build plan entries and the later one wouldn't do anything. But now we have, for the first time, a build pack that wants to go before anything, and it's ruined my life.
Yeah, that's tough because when the meta build packs are usually like the ones that are named the way you want as well. Where it's like Heroku/Java, like that's the name someone's gonna know, even though it's like a composite build pack of like 5 different things that they're probably not going to be familiar with, and you don't really want to make them explode that out into Project Toml, because then you're no longer safe to change the group and add new ones.
pre-packs and post-packs. I'm leaving. I'll see y'all later.
All right, I'll see y'all. Have a good holiday.
Bye.
Happy holidays.